No, everyone's really hungry for lunch, but Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, I think we can get your informational item before us before lunch. Do you want us to come up?
Welcome back.
What's that?
Welcome back.
So I've already welcomed him, but Vice Chair Davis, while he's setting up, did you have something to say? Why don't you say it? Because I've already welcomed, but I didn't do it publicly.
Sorry, I'm up here going, and welcome back. We haven't seen you for months. We're so glad you're back, and Deborah and your whole team was fabulous while you were gone, but it's
Thank you,
great to
ma'am.
see you again. We appreciate you and your service.
And I apologize. The only thing I just kind of worried about, the only thing standing between these board members and their lunch break is this
It's me.
presentation.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, sir. Yep. Is there, so Deborah can bring it up real quick. And sir, just to our Chair Huntsman, just to clarify, do you want me just to do the monthly budget report? Or are we going to go to Sarah Young as far as the update on the CARES Act
I
funding
think
too?
we're going to try to get through this update.
Through the whole thing? Okay, yes, sir. So our methodology for the month of September in your board meetings to ensure that as board members and in a public-facing document, you're all, and the public can see our year-end close summary or packet, and that's what's in the backups. Typically, since, as you know, we're on a state fiscal year date, July 1st, started our new fiscal year, so our expenditures are very, very low for the first month of July and August. So in the past, we've taken the opportunity to ensure that the public has knowledge or can view, and you as board members can view, what I've attested to month after month in the previous fiscal year, or year-end close, which is that the Utah State Board of Education is fiscally responsible. We're able to meet all of our obligations and commitments throughout the year. There is one call out that I do need to make for this particular year-end close, which is that we have a program or process called the Indirect Cost Pool, and I'll develop this more with the Finance Committee. Essentially, our revenue or appropriation for the indirect cost pool came in short this year. We attribute that, the root cause is because of vacancies that occurred. It was short by approximately $500,000. And so we had to make up that delta or that difference as part of the year-end close process. Market pressures are very heavy against us right now in the sense of being able to recruit and retain, and this is across the entire enterprise. It's not just within operations. Obviously, we take a heavy hit in our IT field. Our accountants are hard to retain and recruit, but we're essentially experiencing the same things in our program sections as well. So the so what of that is that going into the legislative session, and as part of, and we'll train on this some more tomorrow during the study session, is the tie-ins, if you will, to the requests that we're going to make for market adjustments and salaries for positions across the enterprise. Because if we don't keep employees in the positions, we cannot charge the grants, and therefore we'll fall short in our ICP year after year, and so I want to make sure that that's publicly recorded with you, is that it's very concerning. However, we still were able to meet all of our obligations and all of our commitments. We'll continue to do so. I am going to attest to the board that we've started fiscal year 22 off on the right path. We're able to meet all of our commitments and obligations. Sir, subject to any questions regarding the year-end close summary or packet, if you will, that you see in front of you and the other board members, I can move into the discretionary funds report.
I'm not seeing any, but indirect cost pool will be really important
Yes, sir.
tomorrow.
Roger.
So they
Yes, sir.
understand how that played in. I appreciate your statement on that we can meet all of our obligations, because there was times early, and some of us, I think there's a couple of us board members, where we couldn't. So it's very important that the public and this body know exactly where we're at financially.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you. So I'm not
Always.
seeing any, so please continue.
All right, if we could go to the discretionary funds report. Also tomorrow in Finance Committee, we'll be discussing year-end balances, or what amounts to what was calculated as carry forward balances. Carry forward balances typically are, not all, of course, but within the board's particular portion of the overall budget that stays in the office here, carry forward balances typically make up the discretionary funds that are allocated or we're able to retain. They're what's called non-lapsing, meaning that, we can carry forward them into the next year. Obviously, on this report too, there are projects that were approved by you that are continuing into the next fiscal year. What we ask for in this meeting, in the September meeting, is for board members to look at the carry forward amounts and what will build up again your discretionary funds for your use in whatever projects that you identify and that you approve. Staff can bring ideas or recommendations to you on the use of these funds. Again, I have to reiterate that, there are programs or funding that's continuing. Next month, we'll ask for approval to discontinue particular projects that, for instance, that we don't fill a position, and so we no longer need that funding. It's your October meeting that, we'll make sure that you see the balances and that we go through the iterative process, if you will, year after year, of ensuring that you understand and that you've authorized where these balances are applied to and for what projects. And we'll need your approval to either continue projects or discontinue projects. That'll occur next month. So I just respectfully request that as board members, you take a look at this report in preparation for next month's board meeting. And then, of course, we'll update it for the October board meeting so that, again, in your October board meeting, we get your approval and your direction on use of discretionary funds, whether it's continuation of the funds from prior years carry forward. That's where you see those, the nomenclature, if you will, like 1.6, 1.7. That's carried forward from those years or those previous years that was allocated or used for these particular projects that you see in the left-hand column. So again, we're heading into October, big meeting in October. Again, tomorrow we'll talk a lot about the process that you're undergoing right now with business cases, things like that. But with this discretionary funds report, I just encourage and ask board members to reflect on this, to study it, so that when we get to the October meeting, we can ensure that we have your authorization on how to proceed on the best use of your discretionary funds. We'll also ask if staff, if they have ideas for projects that they want to use for the carry forward balances. Again, we cover the carry forward balances with state money in really big detail with Finance Committee tomorrow. That's also an integral part of this month's meeting, your board meeting, and then the Finance Committee meeting tomorrow. So I also encourage board members to take a look at the Finance Committee agenda for tomorrow to see those carry forward balances and the plans that are being brought forward to the Finance Committee, because, subject to their review tomorrow, they'll make recommendations on use of those carry forward balances, always subject to your approval in the October meeting. That's the direction we're headed. This concludes my update on the discretionary funds as of this month, September, subject to your questions, Chair Huntsman's and/or from members of the board, sir.
I'm not seeing any lights on, but this is almost like ready, set, go. So we're in the ready position right now, and between now and October, that's the go month. And so now and again, we it's a very high priority that we get it right and that you're informed as you're making those decisions. Of course, finance will move some recommendations forward tomorrow. So we're priming the pump here in that ready, set, go. October will be a go month. We have to take action.
Yes, sir.
On this. Any board member Lear?
So given that urgency or that concern that you just expressed, I just want to make sure I understand. These are not my strong suits. As I read this, the School Fees Task Force has $12,537 left over. And then similarly, the Trustlands website rebuild hasn't spent any of that money. And that's like real money, $25,226. So it's just sitting there. Would
Right.
that, and is that money still allocated to the Trustlands website, or could it now be swept and used for something else?
Chair, may
Yeah,
I
please
respond?
follow. Yeah.
To Board Member Lear's question, Chair,
Yes.
the answer is yes. And that's what the process is in October, is for us to come back to you and say, hey, yes, we still need, or for example, we still need that 25,000 to be dedicated towards the School Land Trust website. Or we come back to you and say, no, we found other revenue, or we don't need that now. So, that frees that money up for other uses. It's not necessarily, though, that you need to, say, well, here's what you do use the 25,000 for. It would go back up into, if you made that decision. It's hypothetical. I'm not saying you will or you won't. It's subject to the process that we take with you when we get into the details of each one of these and we say, yes, we need the 25,000, we're done with this project, or we need to continue it. Chair, if that answered Board Member Lear's question.
I believe
Okay.
it did. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments, so
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
the
Chair
revised
Esmond.
and
Then I'll
welcome back,
defer to Director Sarah Young for the third agenda item for the CARES update at this time.
okay. Does
Or
the
are we
person next to
stopping
you
there?
have anything to add?
What's that? No, I don't.
Very quiet.
Very quiet. Yes, sir.
All right, it's good to have you back.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you all.
Now we'll have Sarah Young, and who else is coming? What? I thought it was Sarah Young. Oh, both Sarahs. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. So I am Sarah Young, your Director of Strategic Initiatives, here to present you with an update related to the COVID-19 relief funding for K-12 education in the state of Utah. So as a friendly reminder, COVID-19 relief funding has come in multiple buckets and awards specific to this agency and meeting the needs of the overall community. As we provide you an update, we do frame our update in relationship to each of those awards so that you have an understanding of the timeline associated with those resources and how they're being requested for reimbursement by the larger community. So our first update is specific to the CARES funding. This is the original funding that the state received in May of 2020. And as a note, ESSER 1 and Gear 1 do need to be spent by September 30th, 2022. So we are nearing kind of the 1-year out date associated with the availability of these resources in terms of meeting COVID-19 needs in our school systems. So as an update to the board, you'll see that we provide the total award value for each of the individual awards that were provided to our LEAs, as well as the amount reimbursed through August 19th, 2021, the date of the preparation of these backups. We also are presenting with a percentage of the total award that has been requested for reimbursement, just to keep you informed about where those resources are in relationship to being reimbursed from the state to our LEAs related to these efforts. In addition to that, you'll see 2 new data points that we're presenting below, which speaks to the number of LEAs that have been fully reimbursed, specific to ESSER 1, the 90% formula fund, as well as the ESSER 1 10% base that was awarded to LEAs that did not receive or received a reduced amount of the Title I allocation and therefore needed additional funding from the state reserve related to addressing their COVID-19 needs. And our second update, specific to the second federal award we received in the supplemental award that came through in December of 2020, I would just remind the board that these are funds for ESSER 2 and Gear 2 that will need to be spent by our LEAs by September 30th, 2023 to be eligible for reimbursement. So 1 year later than our CARES funds. As a friendly reminder, these were awarded this year in April of 2021. And again, 90% of that funding goes directly to our LEAs as directed by the federal formula, with the majority of our LEAs focusing their plans on addressing accelerated learning as needed by students who may have had their learning disrupted by COVID-19, purchasing educational technologies to be able to continue to expand opportunities for learning beyond the 4 walls of the classroom, and then last but not least, implementing implementing summer learning and supplemental after-school learning specific to the needs of the students they serve and their families. As another friendly reminder, we will note that before we share the reimbursement rates related to ESSER 2, that an LEA does have to request their full reimbursement for ESSER 1 before they are eligible to seek reimbursement for their ESSER 2 funds. This is, again, just a good accounting practice in terms of the fact that those ESSER 1 funds are going to expire first, and they're all authorized for the same expanded use cases. This is not the case for the ARP ESSER awards. Once those awards are granted, LEAs can seek reimbursement for that particular funding stream immediately. The update on the screen provides you an overview of where those funds are. A couple items I will note is for Gear 2, we are currently making our way towards the application phase. I'll speak about those allocations here momentarily, but those applications will be received through the Utah Grants Management System before those awards are granted and LEAs can seek reimbursement. Second, for the EANS award, this is our emergency assistance for non-public schools. I'll just note the asterisk related to the award value. We did have one school who ultimately declined their potential EANS award based on the fact that they did receive a PPP loan specific to meeting the needs of their schools. So one of the federal requirements for schools to be eligible for this was that they had not received a payroll protection loan after December 27th. So when that came through, they then subsequently declined their EANS funding, and therefore we have an adjusted award value moving forward. As far as those two awards go, just as a friendly reminder, we do have a little over $12.2 million that are going to LEA awards, and the distribution is specific to the funding in FY 2019, specific to serving special education and students at risk of academic failure. We are asking for a quick turnaround related to this application. It is a smaller amount of funding comparatively to some of the other larger awards that have come through. And in addition to that, the governor has authorized it for the full set of use cases as articulated in ESSER, allowing for a lot of flexibility for LEAs to decide how to best use those funds to supplement their other awards to meet the needs of COVID-19. We also have an award that is pending specific to the University of Utah Reading Clinic as directed by the governor's office for a little less than $1 million, which we will also be awarding and processing through reimbursement as well. Finally, we have the emergency assistance for non-public schools. This is, again, the amended award with now 22 schools in the state of Utah that are receiving their equitable services opportunities directly through the Utah State Board of Education to reduce the burden on LEAs for providing those locally. As a part of that, Chair, with your permission, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Harward for a quick update on the USBE state projects that have been funded with the reserve.
Yes. Sarah Harwood.
Thank you. Sarah Harward, CARES Educational Specialist with USBE, here to give you an update on the state projects that have been funded with the ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 federal relief funds. Just to give you an overview on the logistics of these funds, all the ESSER funds, 90% does go directly to our LEAs, and 10% is for state use under the federal allowable use cases. All projects must be in response to COVID-19. And the funds were presented to the board and approved in open and public board meetings. And these state projects, they are time limited and subject to the expiration date of each grant. This is a table with the titles of the projects and the funding that has been approved. You'll see that there is one project under the ESSER 1 fund, the Targeted Support and Improvement Summer Planning Project, and then there's 6 projects under the ESSER 2 fund, the Digital Access and Education Program, the K-3 Professional Learning for Literacy Project, the Demonstrated Competency Assessment Revision, the Transforming Accountability to Support Personalized Competency-Based Learning, the Early Learning Coaches for Rural Utah and our Regional Service Centers, and then our Scribble contract statewide extension for our K-12 teachers. Just to give you some highlights on how these projects are going, the Targeted Support and Improvement Summer Planning Project, USBE, is working with 22 LEAs, 10 districts, and 12 charters to provide additional time for teachers to develop plans for student success for the 2021-22 school year. For the K-3 Learning for Literacy Project, USBE has finalized the list of LEA participants, sent out learning materials to our LEAs, and scheduled the first virtual cohorts with teachers and leaders for fall of 2021. For the Digital Access and Education Program for Broadband Support, our partners at the Utah State Libraries Division have hired their director of the program and have collaborated with state agencies in the Emergency Connectivity Fund efforts for the K-12 education. And finally, for the early learning coaches for rural Utah and our regional service centers, our Utah Regional Service Directors have researched effective measures for capturing instruction of a coach and developed an evaluation plan to report outcomes. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Sarah Young.
Sarah.
Thank you. So in terms of the final award that we'll be addressing today from the American Rescue Plan Act, as a reminder, the ARP, ESSER, and EANS 2 do need to be spent by September 30th, 2024, which is going to be kind of the last of the expiring funds related to addressing COVID-19 in the current award structure. As part of this process, we will just note that over $615 million in total has been awarded to K-12 education, with 90% being direct funded to our LEAs. For the state reserve, we do have some additional criteria that will be required of the state board when considering potential use cases, including 5% of the total award to be available for accelerated learning, 1% available for evidence-based summer enrichment programs, and another 1% specific to supporting evidence-based comprehensive after-school programming, which we'll touch on here momentarily. As far as our update for the board related to these funds, I will just note USBE did update the due date related to the awards for LEAs to September 17, 2021 at 5 p.m. This gives them additional time and is in response to LEA requests to be able to have some additional time, not just to vet their plans with their school boards, but also to receive additional stakeholder input before they finalize what those look like for submission to USBE. We would also note that USBE had received 6 plans. We're in the high 20s at this point in terms of those that have already been submitted ahead of the due date. As far as the after-school and summer learning funding, this was combined into a competitive grant opportunity, meaning there's over $12 million that has been made available to the field to support these efforts. It does require a partnership with a community-based organization or local business, and that application did close on August 24th, 2021 at 2 p.m. The applications are currently in review, and we look forward to providing you an update at the next board meeting related to the LEAs and partnerships that have been selected for this particular funding stream. As far as USBE technical support, as a friendly reminder, we did provide an overview to our LEAs in July and continue to host office hours every Thursday, including today, at 2 p.m., allowing for LEAs to submit their questions to the office and have a specific point of time for follow-up, as well as addressing individual questions via email in a timely fashion. As far as our award timeline goes, once we've moved through the application process, we will begin also processing reimbursements related to this specific award so that LEAs have ready access to the resources necessary to execute their plans. As far as additional USBE staff action related to COVID-19, I would just note that we are currently working with financial operations as well as the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget related to the upload of Gear 2 into the grants management system and the conducting of those application reviews as they're received. In addition to that, we're working with the Utah Department of Health and CDC related to grant supports that are available for potentially expanding school nursing personnel. As you heard from Betty Sue Hinkson and Kendra Muir earlier today, those are 2 of our staff that are partnering in that effort as we look for solutions. Additionally, we've submitted public comments for draft reporting requirements for ESSER, GEAR, and EANS to the U.S. Department of Education and look forward to their response to those public comments as well as a revised set of reporting guidelines that our office can start working on LEAs with for submission in February of next year. Finally, we completed the state application for the ARP HCY for students experiencing homelessness. That state application is under review with the U.S. Department of Education and has the potential to bring $4 million into the state to specifically support students experiencing homelessness and their extended needs due to COVID-19. As far as the state transparency dashboard goes, you'll note we have a link available. This is where we post all of the awards as well as reimbursements for the federal relief so that our public has transparency into that item. We will be updating that in September 2021 to include the ARP ESSER and the additional awards that we've received, as well as updating the reimbursement values that we have received at the agency through September of 2021. As a friendly reminder, we will be coming back to you in the very near future once the student performance data is available related to making final decisions related to the state reserve and how it'll be used to address both the learning needs of our students and the greater community, as well as other needs as they may arise related to COVID-19. We're seeking for those decisions in ESSER 2 to be finalized by December with the due date for ARP ESSER of February of next year in terms of a required obligation period by the federal government. With that, I know it's just us between you and lunch, so thank you for the opportunity to speak as quickly as possible. Chair, we'll turn it over to you in case there's any follow-ups.
Okay, thank you. Member Earl.
The K-3 literacy, is that letters?
That is one
Okay,
in the same.
I wasn't clear if that was it or if it was something else. Okay, thank you.
Member Cannon, I'll use this list here. Member Cannon?
This is more a comment. I noticed that as you're talking about Gear 2, you indicated that those are funds utilized by the governor, and they have chosen to take 968,000 plus for the U of U Reading Clinic. I know some history about the U of U Reading Clinic. They are expert at helping dyslexic kids learn how to read. And as a mother of a dyslexic son, that is an incredible thing. Not only do they help the students who are struggling with reading, but they also train their teachers so the teachers can then go back and help others. And I know for several years, we tried to prioritize some money to go to them, and it would go through everything, and it would get to the Appropriations Committee at the legislature, and they were not funded. And then they were not funded again, and then they were not funded again. So I just want to express my gratitude to the governor's office for supporting the University of Utah Reading Clinic and for helping kids and teachers who struggle overcoming dyslexia. Thank you.
Okay, Member Moss? You're good? Superintendent, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Huntsman. I just want to make sure that the board is aware of the advantage we have of our SARAs. We have a grants management system. I have the opportunity to hear from people all over the state about the support that they've received with all of these funds, the office hours, the ability to answer questions. We have people from all over the state relying on the data that these great ladies provide for them. And they've just been such an integral part of our schools being able to get resources, not only through PP&E, the personal protective equipment, but just the resources, the funding, answering all the questions, tracking what's allowable, what's not allowable. And we're really lucky in this state to have it so well-oiled. As I talk to my peers, they don't have this kind of structure and support. And I'm so grateful for Sarah and Jessica as well, who supports them and support staff. And it's just tremendous, the work that these two do, and a lot of it goes unnoticed. They give a report every Monday in our leadership meeting. We go over the funds and how they're being used and make decisions and answer questions, and just an amazing time and resource. And it's not the only thing, as you know, that Director Young does. So appreciative of the work and support that they give all of our LEAs.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so Director Young and Specialist Harwood, thank you for being here, and we are a little bit late, and it's just fine having you between us and our lunch. So with that said, board members, we're going to take a half-hour break on our lunch, and then we'll get right back into our schedule. In the interim, I'll probably look at some things that we might be able to condense and maybe move into next month. So lunchtime.